Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Peach Financiers. That's right, we're doing Financiers, which I believe is French for loan shark. And these delicious little almond cakes get their name because they're rich and they look like gold bars. Well, actually, they're supposed to look like gold bars if you have the traditional rectangular molds to make them in, which you don't, and neither do I. So we'll be using little mini muffin pans instead. But geometric issues aside, this is a very easy recipe, and it's going to work beautifully with pretty much any summer fruit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with step one, which is browning the butter. So in a saucepan over medium heat, we're going to melt a little bit of butter. And our butter's going to melt, and then it's going to get foamy, and eventually it will be bubbling enthusiastically like this. And we want to keep toasting it, like I said, over medium heat to a beautiful golden brown. And by the way, it's not really the butter fat that's toasting, it's the milk solids in the butter. So that's what we're keeping our eye on. And by swirling it, you should get a pretty good look. And we want to keep toasting it until it looks like this. Just a beautiful golden brown. And at that point, we're going to turn off the heat and just let it sit there for about 10 minutes while we put together the rest of the batter, which starts with separating 3 eggs. And for this, we're just going to use the whites, but don't throw away the yolks. And what am I going to use those for? What am I not going to use them for? You know, that didn't sound quite as creepy in my head. But anyway, we'll save those for a custard or something. And then to our egg whites, we're going to add some white sugar. And we're going to take a whisk and kind of stir and beat this thoroughly. And no, don't worry, we're not trying to make a meringue here. I know many of you are terrified of meringues for some reason. And what's going to happen over the course of the next couple minutes is that sugar is going to dissolve, and those egg whites are going to get kind of thick and foamy. And you're going to keep whisking until you have something that looks like this. At which point we'll stop and add the rest of the ingredients. So first up, we'll toss in a big pinch of salt. We're also going to do a little vanilla extract. And then one of the stars of the show, some almond meal, which is nothing more than finely ground almonds. And yes, you can totally make that yourself in a food processor. Although because I'm lazy, I do get mine pre-made from my friend Bob. He owns a mill. And then we're also going to need a little bit of white flour, just regular all-purpose flour. And then once all that's in, we'll go ahead and give that a mix before adding our now slightly cooled golden brown butter. So I'm going to go ahead and strain that in. And by the way, you don't have to strain it, but it's really not a bad idea. So we'll go ahead and add our butter, and we'll whisk that together. And as soon as that's all mixed together, we can go ahead and fill our muffin tins. But before we do that, let's go ahead and generously butter these. Now, what many people like to do is they will just toast a little extra butter and then just brush that melted butter into the molds. But I don't like to do that. I like to use regular unmelted butter, which I think helps prevent sticking. But as with most of my theories, I can't prove it. And then to hedge our bets, I'm going to add a pinch of flour into the bottom of each one. And once I have a little bit in each one, I'm going to go ahead and give it the old tappa. And once that gets knocked around for a few seconds, that flour is going to have coated the bottom, and we shouldn't have any problems with sticking. And then once our pan has been properly prepped, we'll go ahead and pour in our batter. And ideally, you want to fill these up just shy of the top. Okay, you don't want to fill them all the way up to the brim. But I didn't do that. Even though I know better, I filled them all the way to the top. Why? Human nature. But it's really not that big of a deal, as you'll see. And at that point, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit with a paper towel, because there's definitely going to be some drips. I find this to be one of the drippiest batters of all time. But anyway, next on the agenda is to give it yet another old tappa, and that should take care of any air bubbles. And then we will be topping these with fruit, but not quite yet. What we want to do is bake these for about 5 minutes so they get a little bit set before we try to fruit the top. So let's go ahead and transfer those into the center of a 400-degree oven for 5 minutes. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to go ahead and slice my peach. So I'm going to use a beautiful yellow peach, and I'm going to slice a wedge and take off the skin. And then all I'm going to do is make slices like this. So we really don't want too much. This is really more of a garnish. So that right there is just about the perfect amount. So I went ahead and I did 12 pieces just like that. And by this point, my financiers have cooked for 5 minutes, and we'll pull those out. And if everything's gone according to plan, it should look something like this. And at this point, it's perfectly safe to top each one with a piece of fruit. And in case you're wondering, you could just put the fruit on at the beginning, but what's going to happen is it's going to sink down, and you won't get as nice of a presentation. And as you may know, in the world of high finance, presentation is important. And of course, if you don't like peach, you can use something else. You are the Richard Gere of your financier, so use any fruit you like. Things like apricots, plums, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. So really, any fruit's going to work here. Except durian. Durian stinks in this. Oh yeah, just a little smelly tropical fruit humor. And then once those are set, all we have to do is transfer those back into the oven for another about 10 to 12 minutes, or until nicely browned and looking something like this. Check it out, those don't look bad. And then what you definitely want to do is let this sit for at least 10 minutes before trying to remove them. Otherwise, there will be issues. So I did let mine cool about 10-15 minutes, at which point they were fairly easy to remove, and my peach financiers were done. Or is it peach financier? I really should find out. You know what a stickler I am for French pronunciations. And then once those had completely cooled, I transferred them onto a serving platter and took a bunch of pictures, of course, which I'll Photoshop for the blog post. But then I quickly lost interest in the photography because I really wanted to taste one of these. And by the way, I'm really not a big almond cake guy. I mean, I love peaches. I could eat a peach for hours. But a little peach and almond cake is not necessarily something I would order. But these really are amazing. All right, the outside's kind of crisp around the edges. The inside's very rich, very buttery, very moist. And as you saw, all this was accomplished with a very, very simple recipe. So if you're one of these unfortunate souls that just never has any luck with a cookie or pastry recipe, these will work. And you can take that to the bank. So I really do hope you give these a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.